wonderful that you can join us here for this Change with Conversation Women in Business discussion panel. My name is Kate Burton. I'm fortunate enough to be one of the commentators this week on the Ladies European Tour. And we're going to be discussing things that happen outside of the ropes, as this is the first team event series of its kind on any professional tour. And that's quite remarkable to think that it's happening in women's golf. When we look at the Ladies European Tour, you've got 35 million euros in prize money across 30 events. What an opportunity this is for the very best in the women's game. So please would you put your hands together as we can welcome our panelists, and they're led by Marwa Al-Khuzaim, who's the Managing Director for Aramco Asia Singapore, who comes and joins us. Vicky Jones, who's the Managing Director for Asia Pacific for P54 and the Championship Director this week for the Aramco Team Series in Singapore. We have Dr. Jaylee Nair, a doctor in sports psychology. Good morning, Jaylee. Come and join us up here. And Sinead McAvoy, who is Head of Events and Partnerships at Aon. So Sinead, please come and join us. Well, ladies, this is all rather exciting to be joined on stage with all of you. It's a wonderful event, isn't it? And I think we have to thank our Championship Director, Vicky Jones, who's worked tirelessly. Vicky, you've been involved in golf now for nearly 20 years. And I can imagine that the golfing landscape has shifted quite a lot during that time. Can you share how you went from working in golf to being the Championship Director, not just of this event, but also LIV next month that comes to Singapore?
So I started in golf back in 2004, working for the European Tour. And it was quite a different landscape, I would say, in terms of the industry. I was one of relatively few women in the business. And I'll never forget my first tournament when the late and great John Paramore turned to my boss and said, "It's a shame Jones is a woman, otherwise she could go far." But a lot has changed since then.
Yeah, it really has. When you think about how much your role has evolved, when you became a Championship Director a few years ago on the DP World Tour, how did people receive you?
Overall, very well, and I've had, overwhelmingly positive experiences throughout my time running events. There have been a few entertaining moments where you're walking into meetings with my operations director, Mike, who's running this event with me this week, and everyone assumes that Mike is the lead and the Championship Director, and I'm just there to make the coffee. But as I say, things have moved on a lot since then, and I'm finding certainly it's a much more female environment that I work within now than it has been previously.
Yeah, and when you think about that ratio and how much that has changed as well, because what's the makeup of your team here, the P54 team in Singapore, bringing this tournament to everybody?
The event team here is, I did the maths earlier, it's 71% female. And the Performance 54 team based in Asia Pacific is 72% female. So really good representation for women within the business here.
What does that mean? It's not just a number. We're very proud to have 72% of women in the role. How does that actually translate into success and being an efficient and effective organisation?
It's really important to state that we don't go out and say, right, here's a target of 72%, this is what we want to reach. We want to make sure we're bringing in the right people to do the right roles who are going to be successful and are going to thrive within the business. It's also important, I think, to have a very mixed workforce so that you get a different perspective, different points of view, and we can all learn from one another.
Jaylee, as a director in sports psychology, gosh, it's an interesting time to be in the headspace of athletes as we emerge from COVID. What have been the biggest learnings that you have found?
What I've seen over the course of, say, the past year, for sure, coming out of COVID, things were delayed, and there was just generally a lot of uncertainty around when they would play and what was happening. And I think that parallels a lot of the things that are happening in business as well. And now coming out of COVID, I do feel that they're still trying to catch up in a lot of ways in terms of really trying to find their sweet spot again, to be in that zone. And one of the key things that a lot of athletes did who really used that time wisely is they really focused on elevating certain aspects of their game. And a lot of it was about doing the mental work. The parallels in business they see in sport is that there's just a lot more going on. And I think that the athletes find this as well. Everything's happening very, very quickly. In business, I find that everyone is doing more, definitely not less. Time management has become very, very difficult. And I think this is also what I see with my athletes as well. I think it is really about making sure that we have some strategies in place to really optimize basically key habits. And this can go all the way down to at the very, very base level in terms of optimizing and prioritizing very, very systematically. And I think that's something that's so necessary in the world that we're living in right now.
Yeah, and not just happening on the golf course outside, for all of us that work in the golf industry. There's a lot to take in, isn't there?
If we go back, say, 10 years ago on the tour, there was only like less than 15 events on the tour for the girls to play throughout the year. Now there's 30. So their experience, their schedule, like everything is doubled. And that can bring a lot of amazing opportunities, but it requires a whole new management system that they need to place around their games as well.
Since we've started working in golf, from an Aon perspective, is the women are all organising everything themselves. They don't have a team or an infrastructure. They are.
Yes, that's a really, really.
And the LPGA refer to it as they are their own managing director. They are organising their operations, their schedule, their training, their performance, et cetera, and it's a lot, and it's a lot of pressure, and kind of doing that over an extended season is incredible, but it's tough.
The reality is that, yeah, they do everything, well, most things themselves. I mean, even sponsorship as well, like trying to get their sponsors, manage their sponsorship, put themselves out there. And this is where, like, when I was thinking about our discussion, and we were talking about, okay, women in business, and then we look at women in golf, but it shouldn't be separate, because these women are in business. Like, this is their business. They are entrepreneurs, and they work very, very hard in so many different areas and angles to make a living. So I feel like we just have to keep it one and the same when we talk about women in business, because these ladies are doing it every single day and managing everything on their own.
Sinead, love to talk to you about brands, as you are part of the Aon Risk Reward Challenge. And can you share with us a little bit about that? Because it's something that runs on the LPGA Tour and the PGA Tour, and there's a great deal of parity, which we like.
Back in 2019, when we launched the Aon Risk Reward Challenge, we launched it across the PGA Tour and the LPGA. And what was most important for us from a firm perspective was our partnerships not only represented us as colleagues and kind of the global diverse nature of us, the male-female makeup, but also we were able to bring an event and a season-long competition across both tours that was equal, both from a competition format perspective, but also the $1 million prize at the end of the year as well.
So has there been anything enlightening about it, surprising about it since it kicked off?
What's been really fascinating is the ability to kind of create media and stories and drive engagement, both from a colleague perspective, but also from a general population perspective, has been incredible cut through for us. And we see every time we're talking about it, that it really resonates and people want to find out more to really understand the opportunity that exists around driving that parity through the men and the women's sport.
Yeah, so there's $1 million on offer to the leading male and leading woman at the end of the season on a designated par 3. So it's a fantastic initiative rolled out on both tours. We're talking about stories, and Marwa, we're particularly interested to learn more about your story, because you've been with Aramco for the last 20 years. Tell us about that, being a woman from Saudi, working in Saudi, and now living in Singapore.
The journey from Saudi to Singapore, I see it for myself, even during COVID, was relatively smooth. Here in Singapore, people are very welcoming. It is a hub. You meet people from across the globe. And this is exactly what Aramco is about. We have so many nationality working there. So living here in Singapore was an amazing experience and good exposure.
Working in the energy industry, which is male-dominated, and to be a woman working at the very top of the game in Aramco, you have shattered a lot of ceilings and barriers to get there. What resistance did you meet, and what did you learn from that?
I like to look at it as more than an opportunity to be a lady, because I like to look at it as an opportunity for me that helped me connect with the people here on the ground. And also, lots of programs going on within Aramco to promote ladies, and the golf ATS is one of them. So there was challenges, of course, definitely, but let's focus on the good side of it.
How excited are you to invest in women's golf? Because Aramco is a significant partner of the Ladies European Tour. You know, $5 million for the Saudi Ladies International. Each one of these team events with the individual honours at stake is a $1 million. So that's it's a $10 million on course when it comes to prize money investment into the game. Why women's golf? Why does that fit so well for Aramco?
Our partnership with the LET is very important to us because, as you said, it is one of our core value is diversity and inclusion. So promoting the sport for the ladies, not just in Saudi, but around the globe, because one of the idea or target of the sponsoring the golf for the ladies is to encourage women to go outdoor and do more activity there. Golf is just one of the sports that Aramco looking at because we continue evaluating available opportunity and what to sponsor as long as it is aligned with our value.
Yeah, you're also involved in cricket and in Formula One.
Yes, and the F1.
Yeah, so it's very, very exciting time. How is women's sport evolving? It's 2023 now, ladies. Are you excited about where you are in your role and where it's going?
First of all, touching on women's sport in general, I think for me, looking at the success of the Lionesses in football and how we've seen that sport really grow in terms of the women's game, both in terms of the opportunities that the players have, the development, as you touched on earlier, in terms of a much more sort of professional approach to women's football and the athletes being treated in a similar way to their male counterparts, but also the fans, the sponsors really getting behind and supporting the Lionesses and seeing what their win in the Euros did for women's football and where we are relative to that. I think soccer is some way ahead of golf currently, but I think we can see that gap is closing in football, and I think that's given us a really good pathway to follow for golf.
I think social media has really just helped draw attention to some of these inequities or inequalities or differences. And it happens across all levels of sport, across all industries, and people are just being more courageous with sharing it. There's more TV coverage, right? So broadcast access through whether it's digital, social, linear. I think that's the other piece that we're now seeing. There's more investment in it.
I'm keen to touch on the team element of women's sport as well. And I think in the past, there has been this big men's golf, women's golf, but we've got players here that can knock it 300 yards. You look at Anne van Dam, look at Lynn Grant, you look at these other players, and there's more of them that have that ability. And it's not just about how far you hit the golf ball, but it is also just how they are able to dazzle the audience. Is it impressing you to see just how good these players are in 2023?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've come from a background of, I started with the European Tour, now the DP World Tour, so very much in the men's game. And seeing the girls here playing, seeing the commitment that they have to not just their personal performance, but also to supporting the growth of the game and supporting the development of professional golf for women and their commitment to making sure that the sponsors are engaged and are happy. They're an absolute delight to work with, I have to say. It's been a really great experience for me.
Yeah, the women are very engaging, not just inside the ropes, but also outside of the ropes. Have you found that, Sinead, working with Aon? I know Minji Lee was the winner of the Aon Risk Reward Challenge last year, a great golfer on the golf course, but what a gorgeous person she is off it as well.
Yep, and one of our ambassadors. Yes, surprising, but not really, because they are their own managing directors, right? They understand how the business works more broadly, and they're invested in building relationships. They're genuinely very interested in it, and ultimately, as you just said, they want to grow the game of golf, and it's they take it on as their personal task to be able to do that for the next generation. I think we see that more and more, and there are others, and as we think about the PGA Tour, the European Tour, or DP World Tour players, they're also becoming more accountable and more invested in it as well.
But what can golf do to evolve and to stay relevant? And if you have any thoughts
Kate,
on that.
I'll jump in there.
Go on, go, Jaylee.
What I see with the girls on the tour, and some of them have been on the tour for about 10 years, but a lot of them don't make it that far. And this is because usually two things. One, financial pressures, but also the pressures of needing to have a family, of being a mum. And a lot of the girls, I feel like, don't get enough time to really develop and grow into the tour because they quit to have families. And some of them, they're only on the tour for maybe 5 years. But, I mean, as a sports psychologist, and Mark would agree as a coach here, that most athletes, the one thing that they need in order to really develop and to grow is time. And if we're going to allow that to happen and really support time, then we need to make sure that the tour isn't just a carbon copy of the men's tour, because it doesn't fit. We need to make sure that women have childcare support, or they're not going to lose their card if they take maternity leave. These are the things that we really need to be thinking about if we want to really grow and develop the game and the tour for the ladies.
It's tough, isn't it? You have to make hay while the sun shines, because Lorena Ochoa, arguably one of the best golfers ever to play the game, stepped away in her prime. She was just 30 and then went away, had children. She's come back and she has a wonderful foundation. And I think that's something that we don't talk about enough, and I think it's a great point that you make.
Yeah, because they shouldn't have to do that. I think they should be able to somehow continue to play if they want to, whilst having a family. It shouldn't be the case where they have to give it up in order to do that. And I feel like we need to be able to find a way forward to make sure that they can do both.
Marwa, I imagine the conversation must have been, it's a big conversation for Aramco to have, to ensure that the same investment was put into the Saudi men's and the Saudi ladies.
Well, you just said it is part of our Aramco, equal pay. We have it within the company, so equal price between genders is something that's definitely one of the core value that we are looking for in Aramco, and speaking on behalf of Gulf of Saudi as well. So it is important for us to promote the game and have more female joining the game and enjoy the golf itself. So this is exactly what, as Vicky was mentioning, it will highlight the importance and give more opportunities for the lady, and that will attract more sponsors as well.
I also think it holds people accountable, right? If you're not doing it, why not? Because others are, and I think it does just create that momentum, the discussion.
Any other questions?
I'd like to ask if you guys, what your thoughts are on helping to bridge that gap, and whether more mixed events might be something that would help bring the ladies up and on a recognizable equal platform to compete against the men and really show people how good they really are.
Grant Thornton with the PGA Tour, the LPGA, have just announced that they're hosting a mixed competition, equal prize, team event. So that's a great example. I know in Europe we had one as well with the Sixers. So there are examples. I think logistically a challenge is, where would you put it when you think about the tour schedules, playing schedules, broadcast windows, etc. So it is complex and it does take time. It's not that there isn't the appetite for it, because there definitely is. It's just how do you make it financially viable based on the industry? And I think people are making decisions to enable it and moving things around to allow it.
Often it's about variety as well. If we suddenly move towards a lot more team competition and a lot more mixed competition, having different playing opportunities and different varieties of competition available, I think keeps fans very much engaged.
So moving on from here, what are you excited about, and what can our audience take away from your roles that you have working in the world of sport and sponsorship and brands, that our audience today go, okay, this is something to think about. Where we are at the moment in 2023 and where we're going. It's great. The Ladies European Tour is in a very healthy place. There's a lot of money, there's a lot of events, and it's an exciting time. What do you want to see more of, and what are you excited about?
I'm most excited about how myself individually and Aon can evolve and continue to be, I guess, fit for purpose. Like, what is happening in the industry? What's changing? How can we evolve? How can we adapt? How can we hold ourselves accountable to these changes to make sure that we're keeping pace outside of that? And what I want to see more of is good golf, and I'd like to get back on the golf course.
I think this is just a really exciting time for women's golf and for women's sport in general. And there's so much momentum right now, and it really is because of the sponsorship we have through Aramco and Aon, and this is really making a huge difference to the value of women's sport, and also for the opportunities that these women have. So in terms of takeaways, I think it's just really building that awareness. And holding each other accountable in terms of making sure that we that we are valuing women's sport.
Vicky, do you see that there's an opportunity for different sponsors that traditionally haven't been involved in golf to get involved?
Absolutely. We find in the conversations that we're having with potential commercial partners, particularly looking at women's sport, is something that is becoming increasingly relevant and important to them in terms of meeting and matching their values with regard to diversity, inclusion, and empowerment. And I think a lot of brands coming out post-COVID, coming through that really difficult time, both for business, for sport, and for anyone working in the events business as well. It's exciting to see that this sort of shift in priorities for a lot of brands, and I think that's really powerful for the women's game and the opportunity that brings.
It is an exciting time. Marwa, you have to be very proud of the investment that Aramco has made. Is there anything that you would like to see beyond 2023 as your relationship with the women's game continues to evolve?
I hope to see equal prize for the ladies with the gentlemen. And I wish that all the ladies will get inspired to play golf, and even not just to go out on the green and play golf, but to use the value and the experience and the skills that they gain to reflect back in their life and their career, if their career is outside of the sports field.
Please give a round of applause to our panel, to Sinead, Jaylee, Vicky, and to Marwa. But we do hope that you have and continue to have a very good day and experience here at the Aramco Team Series presented by Public Investment Fund. And we thank you for your continued support of the women's game. Have a wonderful Friday. Thank you.